Actually, I'm pretty excited, really, because after the comments that Peter made in the paper on Monday, I'd just like to say thanks for handing the 2011 Premiership Cup to us, mate, because apparently you're not turning up. So that's very considerate of you, mate. That's very considerate of you. Okay. So the week's just been fantastic. So no, really looking forward to the challenge, obviously, and it's really good that the top 1 and 2 sides are going to meet on Sunday, and I think that's a really good position for the competition to be in, and certainly the sides, especially from a Williamstown point of view, have been very, very consistent, and certainly they've already got some silverware in the cupboard, so with winning the Foxtel Cup, so it's going to be hopefully a grand final to remember.
John, how's the week been for you?
Yeah, it's just it's been a typical week. Basically, we obviously finished on Saturday and we're thrilled to get through. Waited to see who the opponent was on Sunday, and since then it's just been regular week. Monday, Tuesday training, another couple of sessions later in the week. Business as usual, and looking forward to Sunday.
Peter?
Look, certainly from my point of view, nothing changes. We've probably done a fair bit of doggy stuff this week at the Western Bulldogs. Obviously a change of coach, so there's been a bit of change up there, and talking to a few people. But from the Williamstown end, again, like the other boys have said, I think the players are excited from both groups, and so we'll get together tonight and basically have our first training run together for the week. And so from our point of view, I think that we got through pretty well unscathed on the weekend, and we've probably got about 2 or 3 selection issues, but it's par for the course. So.
And Christian?
Yeah, it's been a pretty cruisy week so far. Just obviously we played on Sunday, so the last couple of days have been more recovery based, and obviously with none of the Dogs boys being around because they're on holidays, it's pretty easy to focus solely on us when we're at the club, so it's been good.
Guys, I'll open it up to the floor.
First of all to you, John, just the disappointment of last year where you missed the whole year because of injury. How special would it be to come back and win that flag after what happened last year?
It's disappointing to miss a year of football, particularly being captain of the club, but I think it gave me a greater appreciation for what it's like in the coach's box, because I spent a lot of time with Gary in the match committee.
How's your hair, mate? It's all right.
Yeah, good. And but also a greater appreciation, I guess, of what it means to me to be actually playing with the group that we've got down at Port Melbourne, and how much it means to me and everyone around the place. So it'd mean a lot to have a good result on Sunday.
Guys, Anthony touched on it in the introduction that this great rivalry between Williamstown and Port Melbourne. The competition's changed a hell of a lot since those times of the 50s. Do you guys still get that sense of rivalry and perhaps even tribalism?
Well, you sort of get reminded about it a fair bit because of our illustrious president in Peter Saltrey, who's been there now for 215 years, I think. So. And obviously we only have to go back to, I think it was 2008, when it might have been a day when Williamstown and the Bulldogs actually had a day for dogs on the ground, and our president was a little bit upset that they might have left some calling cards on purpose for the Port Melbourne Football Club, so there is a little bit of rivalry there, but I get caught up in the moment, there's no doubt about that, and certainly, well, as I said, I get reminded about it a fair bit, and it's always about, I think, the 2 teams on the day that can certainly play somewhere near their best, and it just so happens to be us and Williamstown. But look, I guess it's the Carlton-Collingwood situation, or Hawthorn and Essendon, but certainly a lot of things have changed since that rivalry was established, and it's actually going to be the modern day Warriors that will be going at it on Sunday.
About you, Peter?
It's great to see Jerry Callahan and ex-players, champions of the Williamstown Football Club, come to support us, and always have since I've been at the club the last 2 years. So whether it's a big game or sort of any type of game, that most of the time you see those guys around. So they've really got a passion for the club, and that sort of rivalry and the probably respect, I think, for Port Melbourne does come from those guys. You hear them talking about it, but again, Trevor Monty, the president. I think the presidents probably have the most rivalry between anyone. But from my point of view, just growing up as a kid and watching probably Port back in the 70s we're just the club. And I remember listening to Don Hyde and those guys commentating on Channel 10 or Channel O back then, I think, and everything was about Port Melbourne back in those days. So, and I was a Coburg man back then, and just I actually learned to probably hate Port from those very days. But certainly there's a lot of respect for Port Melbourne, and I think that, and certainly the rivalries. And even if you want to go back further, when they used to have to travel across the water, you know, you hear the stories of one group of supporters be hiding with stones and just pelting them when they come across, and that's how far it goes back, and that's why it's so. It's just fantastic. I think that these two clubs have going to play off in the grand final.
Just to you, Peter. Obviously, there's the competition for spots with the VFL listed guys with Williamstown this week's always going to be pretty tough. Who will take the 23rd player role this week?
Yeah, good question. It's probably it certainly will be between Jack Frost and Stephen Murkowski, and both of them in both finals that we've played. Give us that opportunity to play one of those guys. They're sort of very similar, play the same type of roles, and I think it's a great initiative by the VFL to throw in the 23rd to the finals this year. Sort of made it a bit hard, didn't it? Ayres sort of only been able to play the two. He could only play maximum 2 games as the 23rd and that sort of thing. So I had to probably juggle a bit. I think you guys didn't even play one last week. So. Obviously, probably showed your hand there. You may play young Dermot, but that's another selection issue. It's a good selection issue.
Pete, would you say that you're in a very fortunate position because you've got so many Bulldogs listed players qualified for the grand final?
I guess you're going to ask about the Bulldogs players. Look, doesn't worry me. We played Box Hill last game of the year, and they were fighting for a spot in the finals, and we only had 9 Bulldogs players that day, and I think 12 Williamstown players, and we had a good win. So, from my point of view, I feel for the Williamstown boys. I think this year the list at the Western Bulldogs has been a lot thicker down the bottom end with the trades and so forth, and the new recruits. You throw in Wallace and sort of Liberatore. I always knew that we'd have some good talent even at the bottom end of the Bulldogs list, so it just depended how healthy they were going to be. But from our point of view, it's been able to give young kids an opportunity. That's still one of the key criterias for with the alignment. But when it comes to the pointy end of the season, you still got to weigh up still probably what's best for the Williamstown Football Club, and we'll always make sure there's only a maximum of 15 players when we've probably got 17 available this week. So we'll, that means a couple of good AFL players are quite possibly going to miss out.
It's helpful though to have Will Minson and Jordan Ruffhead, probably the 2 best ruckmen at the Bulldogs, in your team in the grand final. It's obviously a big factor in the match.
Yeah, well, we sort of had him for the year.
Yep.
We had Ruffy last year for the finals, and he was coming. He was pretty injured, and look, you just got who you got. So I'd love to have Wade skipper as well. And the 2 other boys, DeLuca and Fanning, they're terrific. Ruckman. So we certainly won't be having
How
ruckman.
many are you playing this week?
Well, how many you playing? I don't know. But it's last week without Majak Dor, it probably gave our ruckman an opportunity to be able to control that area, but we know we won't have the same luxury this week. So yeah, look, it's great to have those players available, but I've seen many a time when AFL listed players have not certainly had the impact that everyone thinks that they're going to have in big games.
Gary, how are the boys going to adapt to Etihad Stadium? Obviously a new ground for most of your players.
Well, not necessarily, because there's quite a few that played in 08 anyway, so the core of the club or the core of the group's been able to stay together, which I think's been a real strength of ours. And if you sort of look at the ground dimensions of the different ovals that we play on in the VFL, you've got Box Hill, you've got Coburg, even Werribee, where obviously GMO and Williamstown played, there's really not a hell of a lot of difference between the ground sizes there or the dimensions and what you're going to get out here. So if memory serves me correct, we've actually won on every one of those grounds. So there's probably really just the depth of kick that you got to be a little bit mindful of, and I guess what you look at as far as your structure, because if you're taking someone off from, say, full forward, it's a little bit different and a little bit longer from what it potentially would be, say, getting them off a TAC. But, you know, once again, perception is not necessarily reality, and if you want to look at something hard enough and you believe it, well, that's entirely up to the person who's going to believe that. But as I said, we just go and play, and we played on every ground. Ballarat's exactly the same, so, and we've been able to play some pretty powerful footy, so we'll take that into Sunday.
A few years ago, Gary, there was the comment made that standalone sides can't win flags. How important would it be to prove that theory wrong on Sunday?
It's not something that we've sort of spoken about or thought about too much, really. I must admit, once again, it's a perception that's out there, so it'll actually be judged again on Sunday, but you've also just got to look at the circumstances, and it's a different situation for us. We played Ballarat here in 08. It's going to obviously be Williamstown. They've earned the right by playing some really good footy over the last probably 4 or 5 weeks. I think their average winning margin is probably about 75 to 80 points. So it certainly says they're in pretty good form, as are we. You know, we believe we're really match hardened because of the way the opposition has come at us ever since we beat Frankston. You know, we've had Williamstown, Bulldogs, Box Hill, and of course Casey was something slightly different, but they exited out in pretty quick fashion. So, and then of course Bulldogs were terrific on Saturday. So we'll go in knowing that our best is very, very capable, and that will be something that we'll use, not necessarily the other.
What about sorry, Sammy. What about the models? You know, Port Melbourne is standalone, Gary, Williamstown are aligned. What are the advantages for you being a standalone team? Everyone says it's a disadvantage that you haven't got AFL players. Are there any distinct advantages for you?
It probably comes back to the model, I think, Paul, and Port Melbourne Footy Club has gone down that path before, where they've actually been associated with the Swans and also too with the Kangaroos, and for whatever reason they didn't think it was a fit, although with Sydney they certainly got to a grand final, so you'd have to say it worked fairly well. And it just comes down to that 2 hours on the day the grand finals played. But so what we decided as a board was to go standalone, and it's certainly the players in my mind that I've got available and led by Johnny. You know, his captaincy is just inspirational, and he should go down as one of the best captains of the Port Melbourne Footy Club. And I think really good leaders are a little bit like eagles, they're pretty hard to find, and certainly Johnny's absence last year was a real blow to us. So the consistency with your list, obviously you've got to try and attract players too, and we go very hard at ex-AFL players because we know we need them to complement our youth, the Oakley Chargers. I think it's great that our alignments are together on the one day, and something like about 100 players I think that have played with the Port Melbourne Footy Club, so that says it's a pretty strong relationship, and we've drawn on kids this year as the 23rd, and they've been sensational. So for us to keep our list together, for us to keep a core of players together over the last 4 years, because getting there on Sunday just happened with what we've done this year. It's been a growth over the last 4 years, so I think the players know pretty much who's up for selection every week. There's no real disruption, but back to Ben's point before, it never was seen as an advantage, so it's amazing how the pendulum swings. It's always been that it's been a disadvantage being a standalone club. So the club believes in the model, they have faith in the model, so of course it'll all be tested again by very good opposition on Sunday.
How do you see it?